Welcome to The Explainer. Let's get right into it. Today, we're unpacking a really sharp thesis from Alex J. Couture's Beyond the Classroom. The core idea? You literally cannot master leadership in a static classroom. It's just not possible. The architecture of intentional improvement, the real skills, those are forged out in the real world. They're built in the room, right under the heat of friction.
So the very first premise we need to completely deconstruct is this myth that leadership is just a title. It's not. Think about the contrast here. You've got the uppercase L leader. That's the formal office, the positional title, and frankly, the systemic burden that comes with it. But then you have the lowercase L leader. This is leadership as a behavior. It's a fluid, moment-in-time choice where you use core competencies to influence an outcome, absolutely regardless of whether you have the formal authority to do so.
Now, when you intersect that structural hierarchy with actual behavioral execution, you get the blueprint for organizational stability, or conversely, total disaster. Look at the danger zone, the positional leader. This is someone who's high on title, but totally missing those critical behavioral skills. They create massive organizational risk. What we're actually aiming for is becoming an integrated leader. That's the apex state, where your structural power is perfectly backed up by personal integrity and absolute behavioral mastery. To really understand how these behavioral skills are built, we need to look at Couture's own crucible moment. Here's the setup. He gets promoted to lead a team at DoubleClick, but immediately runs headfirst into a seismic cultural shift during the Google acquisition. Suddenly, he's managing massive organizational inertia. Fast forward to month 12, and an executive review reveals a harsh truth. The team simply did not respect his leadership. The result? An effective demotion right back down to an individual contributor role. Paralyzed by what was essentially an unproductive victim mindset, Couture decided to initiate 360-degree feedback sessions with his former direct reports. He was totally expecting validation. Instead, the candor he got was absolutely brutal. As he puts it, instead of proving how wronged he was, those meetings forced him to recognize how wrong he was. The sheer friction of being in that room shattered his traditional positional mindset. But it acted as the exact catalyst he needed to pivot into structural self-governance.
And that self-governance, that is codified in what's called the Temple model. Let's look at the bedrock foundation: self-leadership, resilience, and emotional intelligence. Listen, before you can manage a P&L or navigate some complex corporate system, you have to master your own internal operating system. It is an absolute requirement if you want to maintain an even mind under heavy pressure. Without this foundation, the structural weight of leadership is just going to crush you, leading straight to burnout or ethical collapse.
So what does this actually look like in clinical practice? Well, a director at Google used this victim versus player framework, making personal accountability the absolute minimum bar for entry. Excuses? Those were flagged immediately as a victim mindset. Owning the outcomes? That's what defined the players. Or look at Microsoft. Satya Nadella proved that empathy isn't just a soft skill. It's a measurable, clinical skill. He tied it directly to performance metrics and reward systems, practically forcing leaders to prioritize the health of the organization over their own egos. Now, moving up from the foundation, we hit the pillars. We're talking communication, team leadership, and change management. Think of it this way. If the foundation is your internal regulation, the pillars are the active mechanisms you use to translate that internal clarity into direct interpersonal execution. This is exactly how leaders engage with elite teams. It's how they absorb friction, navigate total uncertainty, and actually drive alignment. And elite teams, places like McKinsey, Bridgewater, the U.S. Marine Corps, they forge these pillars strictly through real-world pressure. Let's break it down. For communication, think about Sheryl Sandberg famously delivering really tough, candid feedback to Kim Scott privately. She proved that delivering a difficult message with empathy ensures the receiver's ego doesn't just block their ears. For team leadership, look at the hedge fund Bridgewater. They prioritize radical transparency to enforce strict intellectual rigor. And for change management, the U.S. Marine Corps leverages incredible relationship density. They operate on this teacher and scholar dynamic to completely eliminate perception gaps when they're executing high-stakes operations on the battlefield. Finally, the whole framework is capped by the pediment: strategic thinking and ethical stewardship. This is the systemic apex. It provides the shelter and the purpose you need to ensure the organization stays healthy long after any single leader is gone. It's all about taking those daily, micro-level tactical actions and aligning them perfectly with long-term, systemic value. You'll see elite organizations fiercely protect this systemic value. Take Toyota, for example. They use andon cords, which literally empower anyone on the line to halt the entire process.
They are prioritizing the overarching health of the organization over narrow, short-term safety. Google does something similar with their rigorous OKR process. It forces professionals to snap out of a purely tactical task completion mindset and redirects their focus onto audacious macro-level outcomes. Because true strategic thinking, it means aiming a lot higher than just playing it safe to guarantee a perfect score.
But here is the real kicker. The ultimate test of all these tools doesn't actually happen in the corporate boardroom. It happens in the 4 circles of friction, right in our personal lives. Think about it. As we move inward from the transient public and digital spaces, through our community, past our extended ties, and right into our immediate family, the relationship density and the emotional stakes increase drastically. In those inner rooms, your structural safety nets, they completely disappear. Behavioral leadership becomes literally the only currency you have left. To successfully navigate these inner circles, you need a core state of being, the even mind. We define this as the disciplined ability to mitigate your emotional instincts and maintain your personal integrity under pressure, absolutely regardless of what room you're standing in. It's not a one-and-done thing. It's an ongoing, deliberate practice of constant recalibration. And it is the absolute, non-negotiable currency you need when the structural authority of that uppercase L is totally stripped away. Let's wrap this overview up with Couture's definition of incremental improvement, which I absolutely love. If you strip away all the corporate jargon, the corner offices, the fancy executive titles, what are you left with? A true leader is simply an individual who strives to be slightly better today than they were yesterday. And by doing that, they empower the people around them to grow as well. It's about achieving maximum signal velocity through continuous, intentional practice. Ultimately, it's a choice. It is not a position. But the absolutely crucial point here is application. Because knowledge without application is completely useless. So I'll leave you with this. If leadership is truly a moment-in-time behavioral choice, one that is forged under real-world friction, which room will you step into tomorrow to test your even mind?